Hi, you're listening to the True Crime Report, and I'm Roberta Glass. Today, Meredith Elizabeth on Making a Murderer. What did Kathleen Zellner win? She's here with the update. Stay tuned. So thank you so much, Meredith, for joining me. So before we start talking about Stephen Avery, Leaving Neverland just aired last night, and I watched it. I know you watched it. What are your thoughts on it?
I think this is a public relations nightmare for the Jackson estate.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, like, the backstories of each boy are questionable. Like, Wade Robson only came out and said he was molested after saying he wasn't. Apparently, the situation was going on at the time where he needed money for his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read online that he apparently wanted a job in the Cirque du Soleil, and the Jacksons were, like, producing it, and they didn't choose him for it. So they're trying to claim that this is, retribution or punishment for whatever. I believe those victims, both of them, and what was concerning was how similar their stories were.
Very.
That both of them said that he liked to view them in a certain angle.
Mm-hmm.
And what rang true to me was when Wade Robson or Robson?
I've been saying Robson, but I hope that's...
I think Robson's good. That, when I saw both of them trying to find, like, answers for the questions, they were actually searching their memories. And when he said, when I was positioned like that, I could look back and see Michael, but I remember seeing the statue of Peter Pan.
Wasn't that effective? Yes, I thought the same thing. Mm-hmm.
And that rang very true to me. And, I think that the second kid really needs to get into some counseling about this, because it reminded me of Abducted in Plain Sight,
Mm-hmm.
how the girl is saying how she was in love with her abuser and that they were going to be married and be happy, and it's sort of this fantasy. And he had that as well, that he was manipulated and brainwashed into believing he was into an actual relationship, but he was 10 years old. And this is a grown adult here. And, at best, if you have paid out millions and millions of dollars for allegations against you of molesting young boys, why couldn't you seem to find a way to not have them sleep in your room? Why was this so challenging for him?
Exactly. And, my question is to the Jackson estate, which has put out a PR push like no other. If you go on YouTube, just video after video has been uploaded defending Michael Jackson. It's clear to me that they've paid YouTube creators to make pro-innocence videos. They paid, this is my opinion, all right? From looking at other campaigns and looking at this, it just looks like they've paid people to tweet endlessly about it, about what liars these two men are. And my question to the Jackson estate is, okay.
And they also, while that was being aired, they aired an old concert.
Yes. Yeah, they put out a full, I didn't know that, they put out a full court press push, and they've done interviews, too, in the media. Like, I know him, which to me is the worst defense ever. He's not like that defense is, to me, the most unconvincing kind of defense, because people have all sorts of hidden behaviors and hidden dark sides. And and we've seen in true crime cases, look at all the people that supported Ted Bundy.
Well, look at, all the cases of the coaches and the teachers and everybody else who were child molesters. Everyone said he was a great guy. He was so charming.
Right.
I wanted to be around him.
Right.
And it's that type of, personality of wanting, why they're so successful as child molesters, because they seem trustworthy, so parents allow them with their children. And behind closed doors, these horrific things are happening. But I think Michael Jackson it was obvious that he was grooming these children.
Oh,
even from what we know, that's exactly what grooming is.
Yeah, and he was an expert at it. And when they found the stuff in his storage locker, just quickly, my question to the Jackson...
What did they find in his storage locker?
Hold on one second. The question to the Jackson estate is, why is he being extorted for money only in this way? Do you know what I'm saying? If he's such a target, he's so wealthy, why is he only being extorted for money by male victims, not female victims, male victims with all the same story? Not like some woman said he raped her or any other, thing. In his lifetime, it's only the same story. So that's my question. But when they found his storage locker, the contents were so disturbing with animal abuse, books that former members of NAMBLA had made, like picture books, of studies of the boy out in nature. And one of his techniques was to scare the living, obviously from the animal abuse stuff, and other material. I can't remember offhand. I just remember some scary stuff being found, like frightening books and picture books, was to scare the living heck out of these kids, to get them to come closer to him. Like Jordan Chandler, his first part of preying on him was watching The Exorcist with him. And I thought about the Thriller video and even the making of Thriller video. That video used to scare the living crap out of me. And I wondered... Oh, yeah.
It's great. And it's, he wanted to do... the theme of it is great. And it's a great video. But it was the scariest music video I'd ever seen. And it was like I remember being terrified as a child.
So do you think that was made either subconsciously or consciously with the idea of using that video to groom kids? I don't know. That's...
that I don't, I don't... Who wrote Thriller? So when you think of Thriller, the natural extension of it is thriller horror movies. And he had, who was it? Jonathan Brandt? I don't even know his name. I'm not even...
John Landis.
Who directed it. What I found beyond alarming, and I found this to ring true as well, was the second kid was... Why is his name escaping me? Chuck? Something Chuck?
Jimmy Safechuck?
Yeah, that Michael Jackson told, he showed him masturbation, and Michael Jackson said to him that you showed me or taught me how to French kiss. So what he's presenting to these children are, this is something that we're learning together and choosing to do together. And we are, I thought that was unbelievably manipulative. Mm-hmm. So what he's doing on a psychological level is telling this child that you are 50% responsible for this because I'm showing you things, you're showing me things. And that was the most disgusting thing. This is a 10-year-old. Mm-hmm. And, and I think, especially that one, he looks back. I think he has a lot of fond memories of Michael Jackson and his time with Michael Jackson. And I think it's that brainwashing thing where the kids really believe that their abusers love them. And this is how you show love. And he hasn't had enough therapy or dealt with it enough to know that he was a 10-year-old.
Yes.
There is no sexual relationship with a 10-year-old that's love. You're taking advantage of somebody who's weaker than you and can't make decisions.
Yeah, that was very clear. And that language was never challenged or corrected during the documentary. It was very interesting.
What's also very interesting is kids under 11, 12 are considered, I don't want to say asexual, but generally there's not huge differences between boys and girls. That if he enjoyed hanging out with children so much, then why isn't he ever known to hang out with little girls? Why is it he would send somebody's sister into the next room and have no interest in them, but want to have this alone time with a little boy?
It's a great question. And also, what I found really interesting is that the maid has come out. I think Australian 60 Minutes did a long interview I watched with her, and she contends that Macaulay Culkin she saw abuse happen to him, which I've always keyed in on myself. That's my thought on it. And when they found his storage locker, there was either a signed picture from, I think it was a signed picture of Macaulay Culkin to Michael Jackson, and it says to Applehead. And in the documentary last night, that I think it was Safe Chuck's nickname for Jackson. So a lot of this stuff was recycled, from one kid to another. Like the nickname.
What's more, what I find interesting is generally when you develop a relationship with a child, and I'm not saying you watch that child grow up. If you, let's say for what, your niece or your nephew or someone, you watch them grow up from 5 and you still spend time. Why does he cut them off at 12?
Right.
Why are they no longer interesting at 12?
Right.
And that's, again, a sign of somebody who's a pedophile that they have. And when you look at these boys, they're all physically similar.
Very. So similar that my boyfriend had trouble, we were watching it together, telling them apart. So similar.
And they're all, it seems as if for somebody who loved all children, he liked white or Hispanic boys. He seemed to have no interest in children of African-American descent and no interest in girls at all. No. So if you're an adult who loves children, 10-year-olds, whether they're boys or girls, are pretty similar at that age.
Yeah.
Why can you only bond with 10-year-old boys?
Right. And male victims who come out and claim sexual abuse, there is a much lower rate of false claims than, it's so humiliating for men to admit that they were sexually abused. The statistical rate of all these men lying is very low. So,
well,
Jackson
if you just
Estate,
look at the video that we see with him interacting with these kids, just based on what we can see, that's what grooming is.
Yes.
Why is he sending, he's definitely cutting these kids off from their parents. Why? Mm-hmm. Why does he have to spend time alone with them? Why is he doing this? It's an us against them mentality. That's, again, exactly what an abuser does.
And didn't you?
Why is he spending hours on the phone with a 10-year-old kid?
And didn't you see?
And when you look at it, we want to say, oh, well, he was sort of childlike. But he wasn't a child. Mm-hmm. He was able to plan tours. He had adult interests. He did it just seems that this one part of his life and what he was wanted to spend his time with, intimate time with, was with these young gentlemen. And we watch him groom them. And at the time, it was the 90s. We didn't know about this. We didn't know about grooming. Mm-hmm. The investigations and the psychology behind molesting kids is so much more advanced now. We know so much more. But if we knew in 93 what we knew now, we were watching those kids be groomed. Mm-hmm. And also, if you look, all the parents, they loved him. He took time to specifically have great relationships with those parents to build trust. Why did he have to do that? Mm-hmm. And why does he have them? The mother said something very interesting, that she noticed a pattern, that he's very into one of the children and an individual child for a year, and then I guess they age out. And what's even sadder is all of them felt shamed and felt jealous and felt that, oh, he's not giving me attention anymore.
Right.
And why does he suddenly lose interest in having somebody who, if he spent a year with this child, talking to them hours on the phone and spending time with them, how does he not then have a relationship that he wants to continue with them as they grow up? Why at 13 does he no longer find them interesting?
Yeah, and my question to you would, I saw a lot of similarities in the personality types of the mothers. Did you? Well, that's the pedophile target. You target kids who come from broken homes, whose parents are out of it, and you look for the ones that you can easily pacify and you can do what you want.
if you ever noticed, none of the parents are really that great parents, and none of them are really that bright. And I don't mean to use that in a bad way, but he targeted kids that a lot of them came from poor families, and that's what pedophiles do. And he's able to help the mothers financially and distract them and do whatever else while he then singles out the boys.
Right.
And this is exactly the target family that where you find coaches and whoever else finding victims, you look for parents that have a financial interest and that you can convince not to watch their children.
Yeah.
There's definitely a pattern with the parents. They're easily manipulated.
And Jordan Chandler, the victim who was the first victim to speak out publicly, who was paid off $25 million, he never spoke to his mother again. And he said the worst thing that ever happened to him was meeting Michael Jackson. And the last I heard is he lived in my neighborhood in New York and hasn't been able to achieve anything in life, finish anything. He starts school, he drops out, thinks he wants to be a pilot, takes pilot lessons, drops out. I mean, it's just, messed up, so many lives. And
well, he does, he's not going to be able to, his father, I can't figure out if he's a decent person or not. His father really came out and released this child's name, and they know exactly who they were. And as a good parent, do you really want your child to be released to the media of everybody knows who they are, that doesn't benefit your child. That's going to traumatize them 8,000 times more than what happened. This kid can never live a normal life again. He probably has a lot of questions about how to be in an adult relationship. He probably struggles with his sexuality. He probably, this is a huge traumatizing thing. And whenever this kid tries to do anything now, I think he's in his 20s, he's always going to be known as the kid that extorted Michael Jackson for money or was molested by Michael Jackson.
Right.
What kind of career can you have that attached to you and people are going to hire you?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I always believe that people can reinvent themselves in one way or another. I know you're right, it would be more challenging. His father suffered from chronic pain, committed suicide, but he was, the Jackson estate and Jackson supporters still put out disinformation about Chandler, that he's recanted, that his father hypnotized him under sodium pentothal, that he got from being a dentist, like all sorts of things. And his father's on tape.
Well, the thing I saw, I hate to interrupt you, but before I forget, the thing I saw, which was the biggest thing of proof, was he was able to describe there's some sort of blotching on Michael Jackson's penis that nobody would know. The kid described it. They took pictures of Michael Jackson's penis, and he was able to describe the blotching exactly.
Right.
Why would that child ever know what Michael Jackson's penis looks like?
Right, and his supporters say he took a good guess, which is so ridiculous. Or they just say that's untrue. And they also found fingerprints on pornography belonging to Michael Jackson, of the little boy's fingerprints on pornography that belonged to Michael Jackson. There's a good article. And that's exactly part of grooming. That's how it starts.
Yep. It starts with showing this is natural. This is what all kids our age do. Mm-hmm. Here's pornography, and it's getting a 10-year-old interested in sex when they don't have knowledge of it. They're not physically ready or able to actually have these feelings. But it's being told over and over again to this child, this is normal. This is what people your age do. Everyone does it. And then comes the threat of, if anybody finds out, and it's not just Michael Jackson's career will be over, but your career will be over.
Yeah,
your family's career will be over.
Right.
And that's exactly the pattern.
Yeah.
And for these kids in 93, there wasn't a tremendous amount of information out there about grooming and how child molesters work and the parents. So based on what this kid said from 93, that's exactly what it was. And why is he sending messages, I love you, every day?
True. And according to, I thought this was really interesting. I'll just read this. No wenches, bitches, heifers, or hoes was the first of the so-called 6 wishes Geordie Chandler was allegedly instructed by Michael Jackson to recite 3 times a day. The boy
What
was...
is it? Can you repeat it?
Okay, no wenches, bitches, heifers, or hoes. And if that's not misogyny, I don't know what is. Was the first of so-called 6 wishes Geordie Chandler was allegedly instructed by Michael Jackson to recite 3 times a day. The boy was also
That's very interesting.
The boy also told Dr. Richard Gardner in their October 6, 1993 session that Jackson, quote, didn't like it if I would want to call a girl or something. And
I'm sure.
Jimmy Safechuck paints a similar picture. So I'm going to end it here because I want to get into the Avery stuff.
Absolutely. Can I just tag on to something? Because that's very interesting.
Sure.
Because he's giving a description of women, and he's putting them in one of 4 categories. Essentially, whores, fat, distrustful, and he's teaching this 10-year-old that you're associating women with very negative qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that he wants to do that. And why, the stuff that he writes to these kids, why would you ever write that to a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
And why is he sleeping in these 10-year-olds' bedrooms for 30 nights and say, why didn't his family intervene at this point and say, you know what, let's pretend you're not molesting children? At best, it's grossly inappropriate. It's setting you up from lawsuits. How can you possibly have a happy, productive life when all you want to do is sleep alone with 10-year-old boys that not related to you in your bedroom?
It's a great question. And why did he move into the suburbs with them? I mean, that's the craziest. I mean, if we knew in the 80s and 90s that Michael Jackson was moving into these kids' homes to their bunk beds in the suburbs, I mean, it would just have caused such a PR nightmare. It's bizarre.
Well, he needs to build trust with the families and fairly quickly.
Right.
He needs to his major goal is getting the parents to the point of trust where they're going to let me alone with this child. And by moving into their house for 30 days, it's a very quick way of getting them on his page. And it seems like he would meet these children, throw gifts at them, cut out the sisters, and then get to the point where he's asking the parents, can he sleep alone with me in my bedroom? Why does he have to?
Unbelievable. So let's get to the Avery stuff. So
yes.
Kathleen Zellner tweeted, we won. What did she win? And what is this all about?
Okay. This is a huge distraction again. And what Kathleen Zellner has done, God bless her, is try to find a way to get she took on this case, and now she's stuck in a place where everything has been tested. She's gotten the best experts in the world. She's gotten the most up-to-date tests on everything, and not one of her experts will testify to, and if you read all their affidavits, they say the same thing, that I can't 100% sure say this was planted. And what she's saying her experts say, when you read their affidavits, they don't. She doesn't have anything. It actually, when she first came out, I was thinking to myself, there must have been some stupid mistakes made because we're humans. This was a big case. There must have been some typos. She really can't find anything. So she's banking it on. She tweeted a whole bunch of real killers like 4 times over the past 2 years. All that changed. Mm-hmm. But her newest claim and what she feels is the strongest is this. Teresa Halbach's bones were found in several spots. One was in the burn pit outside the back of the house and in the burn barrel. There was 2 or 3 larger pieces of bone found in the Manitowoc gravel pit, which, by the way, is in the Avery backyard. Uh-huh. It's attached to their property. So I have several questions about this, just on a bigger scale. That if I wanted to plan a body and frame someone else for it, I would probably dig a shallow grave and put their body where it could be found but not noticeable. Why would, if they wanted to frame him, would they burn the body down to pieces so small they were almost missed? Mm-hmm. That just seems foolish to me. The only people with motivation to spend 12 hours burning a body down to to pieces that small would be somebody who wants to get rid of the body. You wouldn't take the time and risk all of that exposure for 12 hours to plant a body.
That's a great point.
But, and Brendan had 4 confessions, and Brendan's confessions, and these aren't the parts that his defense team and PR team puts on YouTube and everywhere, but he had a whole bunch of free narratives while he's just explaining this. And in 2005, he explains that Stephen the next day told him that he kept burning down the body, and the body was burning. He kept shifting it with like a rake, and his plan was to keep burning it and moving it and burning it and moving it. There were several large pieces of bone, like the pelvic bone, that they could not get to burn down because it was too big.
Wow.
So what they did with those pieces was throw them across the property, at the end of the property. In the gravel pit, there's apparently a number of just random animal bones, like deer bones and large animal bones. So I'm figuring if there was in this gravel pit a whole bunch of random bones from other animals, that they figured it would have just blended in. People say that those bones were never tested, and that the forensic anthropologist at the trial just never tested them. That she looked at them visually and determined they were probably animal bones. In reality, in 2005, they sent it to the FBI lab, who did testing, and that's the FBI, that there was not enough cells in the bones, that it had been way too deteriorated from the fire to be able to get any profile. So that's left out in this narrative, that no, they not only were they tested, but they did DNA testing at the time. Now Zellner's claiming there's a new test, rapid DNA testing. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the same as the other DNA testing, but it's rapid, meaning fast. So in 2006, it's pretty much the same test as they would now. You can't develop a profile that is not there. If DNA is hard to find, it deteriorates very easily. They only find it in about 10% of cases even today, and it's unbelievably fragile. There is not cells there to develop a profile from. So in 2011, what the state did was, and this was 6-7 years after the trial, was they gave the bones back to the Hallback family, including those bones. And the reason behind it was this, that there is no cells on it. We could never prove if it was Teresa's or not. But they may be hers. And again, there is no test, there's no lab that's going to be able to prove this. So we're going to give it back to you. And the worst case scenario is you bury your loved one, maybe with some other bones, but those bones will be treated as if they were hers. Rather than, well, we have these other bones we can't ever test, so let's throw those in the garbage. Because you don't know if they're hers or not, because there is nothing left on those bones to test.
So gruesome.
It's horrifying. And supporters are saying that, those bones should be left in, I think the law in Wisconsin is they must preserve evidence for 25 years. Well, number one, those bones, the specific ones, the larger bones, weren't entered into evidence at the trial, so nobody has to preserve them because they're not evidence. 2, they were tested by the FBI. There is no cells on them. There's nothing that can happen with those bones. No matter where technology brings you, you can't develop profiles from cells that aren't there. You can't develop them out of magic. But the Hallbacks took them, and from my understanding, they buried them. So Zellner, and this is my least favorite claim out of all of them, because I think it's just, I can't even imagine how horrible it must be for her family. But people are screaming online that how dare the state give the remains to the family, and your heart has to break for these people. Their child was returned to them in essentially a shoebox, and that must be horrifying. And to imagine your child's bones may be in a storage locker and they may stay there for 25 years and then thrown out in the garbage. What family doesn't have the right to get those bones back when there's no further testing that can be done on them to, close that chapter in their lives and bury them? So Zellner's claiming that she won. She didn't win anything. They didn't rule on the validity of her claim at all. All they ruled on was, this is what we're going to do. We're going to allow you to present every claim that you want into court. And I think that's the smartest thing the state can do.
Why
Because
so?
and that's all she won. She won the opportunity to present that in a motion to the court and rule on the validity there. They're not saying you have a valid claim here. They're not saying anything else. They're just saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to let you present everything you want in front of a judge, even though you've broken the rules. You're not following procedures. This shouldn't be allowed, but we're going to give you the benefit of we're going to allow you to do it, so there's absolutely no question here. So she's now going to go back to the lower court and present this finding about the bones. And it's, the question is now, how far is this going to go? Like, are they going to be forced, are the Hallbacks going to be forced to exhume the bones for testing when the FBI has already said there are no cells there to develop? I don't know.
Interesting. And so, I'm surprised by the amount of support Stephen Avery has online. Now, are these people like, are they people, do you think he does generally have this many supporters? Or are these people that are paid bots or paid tweeters? Or
I don't really buy into a lot of the quote-unquote paid shrills. I've been accused of being a paid shrill. I have yet to receive a check if we are getting paid for this. But these are people that, I want to mention this before. Let's pretend they test the bones that were in the gravel pit, and magically DNA appears, and it is Teresa's DNA. How does that prove he didn't do it?
Exactly, right.
Let's pretend that Zellner's claim there is DNA on Teresa's Hallback. Well, we know that Brendan said 15 years ago, well, the bones were there because they were too big, we couldn't burn them down, and they were noticeable in the burn pit.
Unbelievable.
How does that prove in any way else that anybody else did this? But Zellner's very good at distracting. Yes. And she has convinced supporters that if we can just prove these are Teresa's bones, then that means he didn't do it. In reality, how does that possibly mean he didn't do it? So I'm not even sure where this is going to go, but I think the supporters, from what I gather, and I see them online, is these are a very passionate group of people that aren't particularly, I don't want to say they're not bright, but they have very limited information, and usually it's just from the documentary. They generally are not able to argue their points. They seem to have bad personal lives where they don't even really care about the case as much as they just want to log on every day and just be vile and attack people. And I feel like they don't even really care about the case. They just want a reason to yell and scream at people and say horrible things. Because if you look at the majority of their comments, it's not actually about the case. It's just personal shots at people and yelling at people.
Well, that's just the technique so often, in true crime. People don't want to argue the facts. They want to call you stupid and disparage your character or your, or make claims about why you're making, why you're bringing up that damning evidence. It's bizarre.
I think it's people that just have very sad and miserable lives and use this as an outlet to attack random people. And the reason I don't think they're so passionate about the case is because they seem to not know much about it. And they seem to not want to know much about it. It doesn't matter. What matters is I have something that I can go online and take personal shots at people about.
Well, it's almost like a sports team type thing, or a movie. You have Ken Kratz as I know you pointed this out, as the villain. You have Kathleen Zellner as the iconoclastic rogue, brave lawyer fighting for justice.
What's also fascinating is they think Kathleen Zellner, everything she tweets and everything she writes and says is 100% gospel truth. I have never lived in a world where anyone believes that defense lawyers are filled with integrity and honor and never lie. That's literally their job. They literally have to lie and spin and twist things. That's what they do. So I don't know why supporters think that Kathleen Zellner is infallible and lives by this code of integrity where she can only make truthful statements.
Mm-hmm.
And so a big argument is, well, she found seven this morning I was reading. She found 7 constitutional violations. No, she didn't. She claims she found 7. All of them have been found to be untrue. But just because she says it doesn't mean it's true. Mm. And they don't seem to understand how the courts work and how defense lawyers lie. And I don't hold that against them. That's their job. Everybody needs representation in this country. Everyone is entitled to that. But just as a rational person, you should go into it saying, well, defense lawyers lie. You know, they put a good spin on things. The best one I know is Dean Strang. Dean Strang appears to be the most honorable man in the law profession. And I think to some degree he is, but it's interesting. I think he's a good and decent man and a pretty honest man. I just don't know why he became a defense lawyer.
Interesting.
Because that's the opposite of the qualifications you need to be a defense lawyer.
Yeah, he definitely goes against type. Yeah, I was surprised at I guess people who are on the innocent side of some of these arguments, and they will argue, they'll make things, they will argue about how bad the legal system is, yet they've never set foot in a courtroom.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And they don't have any understanding. And I don't want to speak as a whole. There's a couple of supporters that I've come across in my time that I like very much, and I think they're decent people. And they don't do the normal tactics of the name calling and personal shots. They just like to argue the evidence, and they're fairly. So I don't want to label everybody under the same umbrella, because there's a couple of decent people in there that honestly believe that some of these people are wrongfully convicted. But they also don't sign on to that gives them license to be vile and attack everybody who disagrees. But they seem to not have any understanding of how the legal system works, and seems to think that if Kathleen Zellner says that Stephen Avery's rights were violated, well, that means that his rights were violated and he's getting out. They also seem to be fairly easily distracted, and there's there seems to be a thought pattern here where Kathleen Zellner has convinced them, and a number of defense lawyers do this, that if I can disprove the prosecution's theory, that it happened slightly differently than they said, that means he's innocent. In reality, that means nothing.
Right.
In reality, the prosecution, it's called a theory for a reason, because it's their best guess. It's based on the evidence. People are convicted on evidence and not the prosecutor's theory. And if Kathleen Zellner, like one of the things she claimed, and this may be true, was that in the blood spatter pattern in the back of the RAV4 with the door open, that it appears Teresa Hallback may have been hit on the head, which then caused blood to spatter in a certain way on the back. I'm obviously not a car person. The hatch, the interior hatch, I don't know what that's called.
Okay.
So support, and that may, what in reality, Stephen Avery never exactly told what happened. We don't know exactly when she got there what happened right after. We have evidence of that she was killed. They think she was raped, but there's not actually evidence that happened. Mm-hmm. So they don't know from start to finish, from all those hours, what exactly happened. So if he hit her in the back of the head by her car, that may have been how this started. Mm-hmm. But they don't have evidence of that. So that may be true. But does that mean that he didn't do it, or just that it was done differently? And that's what supporters seem to struggle with.
It's a really important point.
That let's say he did hit her in the back of the head. That doesn't change the fact that his blood is in 6 spots in the car. That doesn't change the rest of the evidence. The only thing that would change this case at all is if on the crime scene somewhere they found someone else's DNA in 2 spots. That may raise some doubt. But they also have the problem with when people are exonerated normally, the DNA is found somewhere on the body, under the nails, semen, somewhere on the body of the victim. Her body was burned.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to be able to find someone else's DNA anywhere else. So it's based on what we have here. And what we have here is a car that has everybody's DNA on it. And when you watch Making a Murderer 2, which, by the way, I didn't think was close to as good as the first season.
That's
really,
the consensus. That's the general public's consensus, I believe, on that the second one was not as good as the first.
And if anything, I found it to be interesting to the degree of Kathleen Zellner's tests are fairly interesting. And the reason why is it's not proving he didn't do it. It's just he did it differently. Mm-hmm. So, like, the best evidence he had was that blood vial, that the blood may have come from there. She disproved that, which was very interesting. But, you know, in Making a Murderer 2, Season 2, all they did was release more evidence that was used against him that people didn't know about. I think Season 2 hurt him a lot more than helped him.
Interesting. So what are the chances of Stephen Avery getting out?
0.
Okay.
It's just there were no... 0.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing, I'll tell you right now, there's nothing more that I would love in this world than to go to a second trial and watch the whole thing. Right. I would love to. Mm-hmm. My only reservation is just as a decent human being, I think that would be terrible for the family and they shouldn't have to go through that. But if we put that aside, I would love to fly to Manitowoc. I would take off work for 3 months and watch this disaster. So part of me really hopes that she found something. But she can't. And the other big claim she's making now is about the internet search. This is the most manipulative half-truth possibly ever.
Quickly.
Have we gone over this?
No, but just quickly, we have about a couple minutes left. Could you just...
Okay, the long and the short of it is that the Denny law in Wisconsin, and this is true in most states, is in order to introduce a third suspect into trial, you have to provide opportunity, motive, and something else. Uh-huh. What Kathleen Zellner is trying, and motive is, we got in a fight the day before, and they were breaking up. Kathleen Zellner is trying to claim because it was found on a computer search, one of the Dassies was searching alarming porn. Right. That some of it was on the violent side, and she looks sort of like some of the women of the thousands on the computer search like the victim. That's not motive. She's trying to claim it is. The only case in U.S. history where porn has been to be used as motive is one specifically where this man only had gay porn, and the gay porn was, gay men were being unbelievably abused and hurt and killed, and he had gone and killed a gay man. So they were able to tie that of, this is the only thing he viewed, and this was his action. Outside of that, you can't use porn as motive. And what the supporters don't seem to realize is Avery had alarming porn of his own on his own property that the prosecution wanted to enter, but the judge wouldn't let him to trial because, again, porn isn't motive for a murder. The other problem that Kathleen Zellner has with this is that a jailhouse snitch said to the police that Stephen Avery just told me that if they ever search his sister's computer, he's screwed. And normally I don't give jailhouse snitches a ton of credibility, but that's a pretty specific claim to make. His sister's computer. How would he possibly guess that? And the other thing is they talk about how there were child porn searches. Mm-hmm. Well, when they did the data for it, it seemed those stopped immediately when Stephen got locked up.
Right.
Other searches went on. So, and by the way, there's an agreement between Kratz and the defense team saying that, okay, how are we going to transfer this evidence to you? You can either have hard copies, you can have digitally, and they all agree to digital copies. Kratz sent Dean Strang the digital copy of it, of the computer search. That, by the way, still can't be entered into evidence, doesn't really mean anything, and if anything, if somebody did enter into evidence, it only hurts Avery more because he had knowledge of what was on that computer search.
Wow.
But it can't be used.
Okay, so...
Dean Strang didn't have the computer program to open that file. He had the option of saying to Ken Kratz, I can't open it, send me a hard copy. He never, Kathleen Zellner is claiming that's a Brady violation because they didn't have access to the information.
Meredith, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Sorry.
You're fabulous.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.